Hello and welcome to Gaming Under the Influence. I'm Mike, coming to you from GreenDragonCVR in Woodbridge, Ontario, with my good buddy Alex to talk about video games.
Oh, yeah.
How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How are you?
I'm not so bad. Playing some Lies of P, which I'm just pretty impressed by, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Great
I've been seeing that on the channel.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, it looks pretty sick. I mean, it's
really
a Bloodborne clone, and I'm kind of a big Bloodborne fan. I'm surprised I haven't jumped in yet, actually, when I think of it that way. But
I think you'll like it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I will. But yeah, I've been like jamming on Cyberpunk a little bit because of the 2.0 update.
Great.
It just dropped last night, actually. I started a new game, so that's been pretty cool to see some of the changes that aren't super apparent yet because I'm still early on, but you can see they revamped like the perks and stuff like that. Plus, I love Cyberpunk, so
yeah,
that's
me too. New story content time.
Always cool, yeah.
I've installed it too. I'm hoping to jump in sometime, but
oh yeah.
But in any case, here to talk about something specific today.
Oh yeah.
And many of you, if you're listening to us at all, have probably heard about the FTC Microsoft document leak. All of these emails from 2020 submitted as part of the evidence and the merger, the attempted merger between Activision and Microsoft. Somehow the information leaked, and a lot of weird things in those emails.
Weird things. There's a roadmap for some games, which was kind of cool to see. But though. Yeah, I mean, it's cool to see what they're planning, but it was like a Fallout 3 remaster, I think.
They're planning literally. Anybody could have just
Quake reboot.
What are you planning? Well, everything what we're doing now, except with another number on.
With another number.
You know
I mean, in that sense, I guess, you can kind of see where Microsoft is going with this. I mean, I at least like to see that there was a Quake reboot on there instead of like Doom 3 now.
True.
But in a sense, that's kind of still the same thing.
I mean, it's almost worse, right? It's just a reboot instead of a.
Yeah.
I was enthused to see that thing about how they were talking back and forth about how 2022 was a disaster for them because of this is their words actually.
Yes.
So that was hilarious because that's what we've always been saying.
Oh yeah.
They were like, it's a disaster for us because we've dumped a pile of money into what they called content creation, as though they're just shouting forth YouTube videos like us and not making games, you know. And it hasn't yielded results. There's a huge nothing but big gap in their catalog, a vacuum where that expensive content should be.
I don't know what they expected.
But yeah, I think that that lackluster 2022 period for Xbox speaks to the problem we'd like to discuss today, which is. I think ultimately, we call it monopolization in the video game industry. Yeah. But in the first place, I think the root of this problem is a lack of self-governance on the part of studios making games, on the part of developers who become shackled to the financial interest of a larger publisher or even a console manufacturer.
Definitely see like the non-fruits of the crappy labor coming out on the other side, right? Like I think it's been dire for Xbox, and they even said it themselves.
Not great. Especially they were talking about this 2022 period, and now if you were to ask them, they'd probably say, well, Starfield came out, it did well, and honestly, it's not a bad game, and there's a lot to be said about that another day. But this is specifically in reference to that 2022 period, and it's disastrous it's disastrous and unanticipated absence of games. So
poor planning for sure.
I think what does this show? Well, it shows that when developers making something are not the ones totally in charge of the effort they're putting into the game, the product, whatever you want to call it. I think we should expect that there's a deficit of good work, good ideas, and ultimately a good game, right? How could there be anything at all when you think that the financial motive should be enough to bring people in to make something beautiful, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a weird contrast to what we had initially at some point believed that maybe it could be a good thing to be.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, our initial idea was that first-party development, any situation where the developer is not where the developer doesn't need to concern themselves with financial interests is good because they can more clearly focus on making games.
Making the game,
But I think the thing we didn't consider about that at the time is, the unstated the implication of that is that if they're not the ones in charge of it, somebody else
is. Yeah.
And if somebody else is in charge of it, then the people making the game and their artistic concerns are going to be an instrument of that financial motive,
that
right?
Somebody else typically cares less about the game than the people making the game.
They probably don't care if it's a game at all. If it's a box with nothing in it and people will buy it, they're happy with that too, right?
Essentially, that's
So I think that ultimately gets at the heart of this, and that absence of games in 2022, I think, is a good example of what we're trying to say here, right? Like when you subordinate the desire on the part of the artist, the person making the game, to make something good, when you subordinate that to a financial interest, instead of it being the other way around, right, where somebody's making something good and they need money to do it. Money is, like food for your body, and that's the relationship between the developer and money, right? They need to do it, but they don't live to eat, unless you're a glutton, right? I think this inverts that order, It makes it so that the game is nothing but a means to making money instead of the money being a means to making games, right? And that's always going to be negative, and it should lead to subpar results because the quality of the game is not a necessary component of making money.
Yeah,
as the popularity of so many terrible games.
When you're talking about something like Xbox with Game Pass, they're just trying to fill the content right?
Yeah. So I think that initial problem, this lack of control on the part of developers over this lack of self-determination, self-governance on the part of developers when it comes to financial interests, it necessarily means that somebody else is governing them in the name of financial interests alone, and that's a problem, right?
That's where bad decisions and
Yeah. I don't think that necessarily even requires a monopoly. It can be at a smaller scale, but I think when you have this set up, when there are people who they're not making the game, but they own somebody who does, what do you think is going to happen? Like, what's the necessary logic of this arrangement, right? I think it is that they're going to try with their profits and procure other people to make more games for them so they can make more money, right?
Of course, yeah.
That's
I think in the past, I was going to say we just have been spoiled with, because obviously there are a lot of good first-party games that are owned by, your platform holder, whether it be Sony or Microsoft, Nintendo, whoever, right? Like that, it does exist. So I think that kind of swayed us to thinking, okay, maybe it is good if platform holders like Xbox and Sony are buying up studios, but then in practice, it doesn't always translate well, especially just what's going on in the industry now, like I said, with the Game Pass and digital becoming, like, just there's a lot going on, and it just doesn't. It's not working. It's not working out, and
I think
it's getting ugly.
Probably the cases where it does work, it's against the fact that this arrangement is in place and not because of it, right?
Yeah.
And I think, you mentioned Nintendo there and even Sony, and whilst their development has shifted westward, and I don't think this is true of them anymore, I probably said something like this in the past, though, but Japanese culture, I think, is a kind of like a bulwark against the worst excesses of capitalism,
Yeah.
Where, like, here, American companies could, it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but they would sell you an empty box.
Yeah.
That's a charitable, I have more interesting language to use to describe it, of course, but they would sell you nothing if they could get away with it. The making of something good is totally not on the docket. Nobody cares about that. Not one person involved cares about that. The thing could be nothing, and it would be perfectly good if it would sell, right?
If it sells, yeah.
Whereas I think that Japanese game development, which is why I favor it, irrespective 100%. Of the fact that they're caught up in the same socioeconomic structure that we are in many ways, there's still an imperative to produce something good and beautiful, I think, due to the cultural inclination to a kind of realism that we're no longer inclined to in the West, right?
I feel like Sony was a good example and still is a little bit, but not nearly as much as they used to be in the past, of course. But Nintendo is still kind of the gold example of that. Like, they still have integrity, and they don't always make something that's amazing, but I feel like they at least always try and have some integrity and put out a product that they're proud of. Like, there's almost never really any bugs and shit like that in Nintendo games. They're not too, like, you can just tell, like, for the most part they stick to a higher quality, I feel, than even maybe Sony and here in the West, whoever's making games.
Because Sony's leadership and development has shifted westward.
That's that's kind of the root of the problem for Sony specifically.
Probably a topic for another video too, but Japanese culture is like, their view of reality and human nature is radically different than ours. And 100%. I think whereas in the West it's possible for us to become totally given to this there's no real simple way to say this, but this idea of like the simulacra, where we don't believe anymore that reality and the representation, that reality isn't the original and we've represented it. Instead, we believe that we construct reality with our performance and our representation. This is the Western view of everything. It's pervasive not only in our economic structure, but in other things that I probably shouldn't mention here, of course. And this is just not the case. Not at least as prevalently in Japan.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a matter of fact, right? You can go ask anybody on the street if you don't believe me, right?
Yep.
They are still realists about things outside of their minds, which I think allows room for them to say something like, "I'd like it to sell, of course,
but also want it to be good." Yeah, exactly. I want to be proud of it.
I want it to be good. I'd like it to sell, but I want it to be good.
Yeah,
that's swear-free take there.
Fair enough.
I don't think we can do that here. I think the concept of something good just doesn't even make sense. It's goodness to people who don't believe anymore in the original and its representation in a financial world. They just believe in the conflation of those things. The goodness of it is if it sells. It's as simple as that.
If anyone disagrees, just look at Xbox, look at Microsoft right now. Like, they're a prime example of what's happening. They're buying, as many studios as they possibly can, and they've never been so bankrupt of games. It doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense.
But it just goes to show that those are separate You can't buy somebody to make something for you. People make things because they love what they're making, and it's good and beautiful. And if you say, "Well, I bought you, I'm the boss of you now," they're gonna say, "Nah, I'm gonna go make my own studio. I'm gonna go with these guys who actually are not idiots, and we're gonna make our own. We're gonna make
something else." Yeah,
exactly. Like Buddy jumped ship from Arcane before Redfall and made a better game. Called Weird West, by the way.
Dead Space guy. It's happening all over the industry. There's the people making a game called The Finals, or ex-Battlefield devs. There's another, I think, an RTS game in development from ex-StarCraft devs from Blizzard. It's rampant in the industry. People are effing off, and it doesn't always work, but sometimes it does.
Yeah, Glenn Schofield just left the studio he found.
For him, man, it was an unfortunate L on that part, but at least he tried.
It sucks, at least. But no, the point is clear, though, right? Like, people here, when they're told, "Well, I own you now," they're like, "Nah, you can keep the studio. I'm gonna go make something else," right? The hilarious
rock star. Oh my god.
Sure. Exactly. Just further evidence of the fact, though, that the Japanese and Western culture is distinct. Think of the fact that Miyazaki started at that company when he was young. Think of the fact that Tetsuya Nomura was around for the original Final Fantasy and came back for the remake. Western companies, they shat people out like garbage, bro. No respectable people stay anywhere, and not even Western companies are so bizarrely disconnected from reality, so given to financial considerations to the detriment of any regard for the real world, that they'll have world-class talent, the Hausers there. Is that their name? The Hausers?
Dan Hauser, and I can't remember the other one, but
the Hauser brothers there, or like Amy Hennig at the Western Studios.
Amy Hennig,
she was just essentially, dismissed from out of hand. Like all of these famous Western developers, it's
nobody
unbelievable
really appreciates their work or cares. I don't know what it is. It's so weird. I know we sound like anti-Xbox, but at the end of the day, we're only reacting to what we're seeing. Like, I miss the Xbox days of old that are far, far past us. Like, we're
Western development wasn't like this
age.
Back then.
No.
Well, we were around long before it became this way. Like, I grew up my young life. I think between the ages of 10 and 25, probably, Western game development for me was still healthy.
It was good. Now I'm in my early 30s. The 360. Up until the 360 days, like, they were on a huge Xbox was thriving, right? They were on a massive heater, and then things started tanking before the Xbox One.
Remember in the 360 days, the early 360 days, there was a huge bunch of games developed both in and outside the West for Xbox that were great. Like, remember even the initial period there with Dead Rising and Gears of War.
There was Blue Dragon or something.
Blue Dragon was a Japanese one. Lost Odyssey.
That was when they said they cared about Japan, and they actually did, and now they say they do, but they clearly don't.
Whatever the hell the case was, they were making stuff.
Exactly. They totally doubled down on Game Pass and buying up studios so they can fill it with content, and the content ultimately suffers, and that's
really, man, the difference might be the fact that information technology wasn't what it is today, and back then people were not, they didn't have the stuff before their eyes to put together the illusion that they could make a game based on financial considerations yet. Now you can go and track everything in real time, see what people on Twitter apparently want. It's possible for you to see like, well, I built a model that will predict our future success. Like this kind of stuff just, people couldn't do it before. Like,
that's true.
The internet didn't exist. I think that does.
You had to actually come up with something, a good idea, something creative.
There's material considerations that were different. That
our data shows that this, and this. Yeah, that's great for like a sports team where you're looking for data of like real hard
the
things.
Idea
But
that the financial sign couldn't absorb the reality to the extent it can now. That's why things were different, I think, back then. But
you're
whatever the
onto
case,
something there.
That's the reality we're in. In the first place, there's people making the games who, for one reason or another, lose self-determination and are subject to the determination of people with financial control over their project,
Right.
And that probably tends towards monopoly, as we've seen in the case of most big publishers.
Yeah, definitely.
And console manufacturers. And I think it's not desirable because then you have these two competing interests, right? The people making the game wanting it to be good and people who are mostly concerned with the thing being profitable, even if it means it's not as good.
Yeah.
The best case scenario, now we've done deconstructing all this shit, what do we think the case should be? Well, I think the best case scenario, we've said this before, is the Kojima situation where Mans is both in creative and financial control of his own destiny, right?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
That's the best case scenario.
Both sides, and he's able to freely make a decision on how much they're willing to invest to get out whatever vision they want to see, right?
Can order things as the means and the ends are set up properly, where you need to make money, but you make the money because you want to make something good, at least insofar as you're working at all, right?
And even, I know, again, Japan, but look at like Square Enix. They're like the Japanese EA, let's say. And would you say they're worse than EA? No.
Well, maybe in some ways, but at least though they're games that they are developing their own games and publishing their own games,
absolutely.
Right? I don't know if it's exactly correct to say, like in the same way as Kojima or even FromSoft, that the creatives are in control of the company, but at the same time we just have this information about the development of 16 where they literally said it's like a fiefdom every time the producer is in charge of a project. There's so much so hands off and so free reign that they've been in multiple cases capable of just blowing tons of money on nothing,
which could be bad, of course. But I mean, at least they kind of let it happen. They were like, you're this, we're putting our faith in you. You're the creator, right?
I think though, because the development is in-house, you do have something resembling this self-determination that you would get in a case of where the developers actually own the company. Then you have the Miyazaki case. I think this is the next best case where the guy's not owning the thing, but he's the president of the company he develops games for. So that kind of determination surely assists.
But he's the president of the company, but also like a director, or like you said, he's also involved heavily in the making of the game. It's
the idea being that financial and creative considerations are not separate. The guy who is in charge of one is in charge of the other, so you can order them appropriately, and you don't have this parasiticization of the creative interest by the financial one, right?
Look at one of the biggest failed games, I would say, this in the last, years. Look at Halo Infinite. That game went through like 4 creative directors, guys up and leaving, Microsoft just plugging in another one, dude. Like, you can't just do that. And look what happened to that game. It was a massive flop. Like, I don't care if it bolstered up Game Pass and hyped people up to play the next Halo. Nobody considers that game a good game. It's terrible. It didn't have any legs. It wasn't didn't have a it would never be compared to like the pedigree of shit that Halo, paved the way before it. Like Halo 1, 2, and 3 were incredible games, right?
I think that's the case of
they'll never see days like that ever again. It's you have to.
Well, Bungie's gone, so it makes sense.
Like
I think that's a case though where the representation of the thing within some system of meaning other than itself, be it financial or brand-based, however you want to think about it, right? Like the sign of the thing overtook its reality, and it doesn't actually have any reality. It's a fucking it's a spoof, right? It's an image. It's a meme, right? It's not a game, bro. But that doesn't matter. It's the image, the brand that sells, right?
Exactly
like Marvel. It's exactly like this simulacra entered. It's not a real. It doesn't exist.
I can almost say the same about
assembled series of images, right?
Honestly, as much as I don't want to say this, I can almost say the same about Pokemon nowadays.
I can go with that.
with the game specifically. Like I just, they're starting to get really kind of bad and lazy.
It's just an imitation of it.
And they don't care because it sells, right? So who gives a shit? So whatever.
It's like we forgot.
Breaks my heart.
It's like it doesn't remember if it's being a game or if it's just imitating an old game, which was imitating an old game.
It's just like they probably have like a very short list of requirements of like just nail these boxes and we're good.
Yeah.
As long as people are playing Pokemon, they'll buy it. It sells gangbusters. What are you gonna do?
At the end of the day, the most fundamental reality of the game, just like any other work of art, is in the mind of the person who's making it, right? So you can't just take that part out of the equation and subsist. Even with the material parts, that wouldn't be good enough on its own. We get something quite like, it's too many examples for us to even list, aren't there?
Oh, yeah.
You get something like a Call of Duty, right? A materially competent game with no motivating concept to the point that it's almost worthless. But imagine then taking even that stuff away, and all you have is not even the material parts nor the concept, and you just have a brand. Halo, Marvel. I like Marvel. Do you like Marvel? I like Halo. Oh, I'd buy the next Halo. Yeah.
Oh.
Is there a game? I don't know who's making it. I don't know.
Doesn't matter.
But are you buying it? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh.
That's the world we live in right now.
Yeah, a little bit. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but I mean, on the flip side, there's still a lot of good stuff out there. We're just kind of, I guess, ranting on the general crap that's going on in the industry and all this. To be clear, we're against monopolization in regards to any company. This is not like, obviously we're hating on Xbox a lot here, but we're also not happy. I've heard discourse online saying that Sony should buy Square Enix to kind of even the odds against Microsoft, and it's just like, no. No, we just stop those stupid ideas. No, don't let them buy me. They bought Bluepoint. Okay, fine, whatever. Like
any company that
bought a few
makes self-respecting art should be independent. Yeah, to the extent that is possible, right?
You know what? That's why I actually kind of like that they bought Bluepoint, because they kind of just use them as a tool to like remaster games. But again, that's like
they don't really make stuff though.
They're more of a technical studio. Yeah, exactly. Which is cool. There's room for that. I mean, Demon's Souls remake was awesome, and they've done countless other ports, remakes.
Wasn't it Shadow of the Colossus too?
Yeah, they did like those.
Yeah, I think there's a place for that kind of that video game preservation stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Bringing things up to current spec. It's not against that at all. But yeah, buying studios to creatively bankrupt them is I'm so over that. EA's been doing that for years.
Buying them, isn't it a form of creative bankruptcy?
Yeah.
That's the problem, right?
Yeah.
Insofar as now, whatever anybody says, they're instruments of a financial concern. That's what it boils down to. Yeah, so monopolization sucks. Hearing that stuff about Phil wanting to buy Nintendo.
Oh, that made me sick to my stomach.
That was gross.
If that's a reality that we lived in, I would honestly stop playing video games. I'd be like, I'm done. This is like
just gonna play Japanese games.
Yeah,
forever. And not ones owned by Americans.
Man.
Straight up, what is that, buddy? No, but all of these things, it's like, you read these two things in tandem. Hey, we bought these studios and they're making nothing. Let's go buy some more. You know what I mean? Why?
What are you guys doing?
They can sit on a bunch of people who all the respectable individuals leave and you just left making nothing. Right?
Yeah.
Well, there's nobody to make it, but we own Halo.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
I killed the author and stole his name, and now I'm going to write a book. You know what I mean? Like, congratulations,
Good
right?
job.
Yeah, it's actually absurd. I like this example like we always use. It's like if it's like Michael Jackson, he's dead, and somebody dresses up and they're like, the music company is like, well, we found another one.
You know, it's Michael Jackson. Well,
I don't think so. He's dead, right? Yeah. What? He's singing the same songs. He's got the same costume. Oh, well, I guess you're right, sir. Like, no, man.
I like the band analogy better too. The one where you lose all the members of the band just. Yeah, that's why it's called a tribute band. It's not real. Right?
That's why it's called fan fiction. It's not a book, right? Like it's yeah. I think exactly the same thing here.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so unfortunate, but I have faith in all other parts of the world than the West, so we'll be okay.
Yeah, that's right now as of
with
now.
Art as in all things.
Aside from Sony kind of going towards more the Western direction, we still got a lot of good stuff coming.
But they don't develop games anymore. Is there a Sony game studio anymore?
Well,
there was Sony Japan Studios.
Oh,
they
that's
shut
right.
It down.
They just actually closed those studios. That's right. They own like Insomniac now, anyway. I think. But I know, yeah. Well,
fucking
West,
Marvel,
right? Yeah.
Marvel chodes. I'm out.
Ratchet and Clank and Spider-Man.
But they're Americans. They don't make. I mean, Sony. It's not like Square Enix. They don't have a development house anymore. Remember when they had
That's true.
Sony Japan
Yeah, they
Studios
just don't
that,
have
by the
Sony
way,
Japan.
made amazing games.
Yeah,
Why?
they helped with Demon Souls, I think, too.
Dude.
Yeah.
Gravity Rush was amazing.
Gravity Rush, yep.
How come
1 and 2.
talks about that game? You know, it's so good. I don't know if you've ever tried.
I've played
like,
1 and I haven't played 2, but I've played 1 extensively on the Vita when it came out, and I loved it.
It's
yeah.
criminal that
it's amazing.
they
Yeah,
shut that studio down.
Oh, yeah, awful.
And I can't imagine their budget was that big, anyways, making games
Probably
like that.
not.
You know?
Yeah, they didn't.
Criminal.
Yeah.
That's
They also used them as like a utility. Like they helped on Demon Souls and
Japan
stuff like
Studio.
that.
Yeah, good, fine.
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah,
was
they
a
helped
good
with a
game.
lot of games, actually. I think they helped. I want to say Kojima at some point with some game, but I'm not sure because I think they might have been closed by then. I don't know, but
I like those kind of collaborations
Yeah.
between creatives. You know,
yeah, even like Platinum helped Square with Final Fantasy 16.
it's very different than being forced to make the next Call of Duty, of course.
Yeah, right. That's true. Like you're still,
Imagine
you're
10 years later, you can be like, I worked on the Demon Souls, the original.
Yeah.
And then some guy's like, 10 years ago, I worked on a Call of Duty, Call of Duty number. What was it again? You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's infinitely unfinished is what it is.
Halo, infinitely depressing.
Yeah.
Infinite what?
Yeah.
If I was going to play a game like that, it would be Destiny again,
Yeah.
which is more Halo than Halo. No. But I guess we're way
Now
out.
we're clocking in 27.
Oh, not that bad.
Yeah, it's all right.
Well, I don't know. Those are my thoughts on that, man. I don't know. I feel like just, unlike my previous consideration, which was that my previous position, I think it must have been a couple of years ago when we talked about this.
yeah,
was
the
that
last time we
because the first party is good because then, the developers are insulated from financial considerations. But I think that is exactly the problem because
Yeah.
I never considered that if they're not thinking about it, somebody else will think about it for them, right?
Yeah, and that somebody else is not making decisions.
No, they're
based on anything to do with the game. It's
at the end of the day, they're not making the game. That's as simple as, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if they do want the best for it, they can't want what the developer wants. They're not the same,
Yeah, that's true.
They're individual goods. They're distinct. So
Yeah.
it's better if the people making the game direct the financial considerations themselves such that they can order those things appropriately.
Yeah, 9.9 times out of 10, that is the better option. Maybe 10 out of 10. Probably.
Now, this is not to say that people can't prostitute themselves. OnlyFans exists, right? Like, there are people who are like that, too. You know what I mean?
Fair enough.
You can be a self-prostitute. You can be like a buddy who, Cliff Blazinski there, making Lawbreakers. And
What about the case of Sekiro, where like Activision just gave
That's cool.
FromSoft a bunch of money to?
I think that's a great example of how it should be, actually. Yeah, they're like, you take the money. We don't own you. You just take the money.
Do it.
That's right.
Just do it here. It's
Great,
done.
man.
One transaction.
That's how it should
maybe,
be.
whatever,
That's
but
beautiful.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful arrangement right there. I mean, they're already owned by some Japanese international company that's huge, probably as big as Katakawa Corporation is probably as big as I'm not entirely sure, but they're big too.
Yeah,
so
I
it's
can
not really like
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's how it should go. Actually, that would be a good arrangement. And look, it worked out for everybody.
Did they just publish Sekiro here though? I would imagine Bandai Namco published it.
They,
in Japan,
I know for
right?
sure. I read about how via Activision they had access to quality control, distribution, and all these things that they did.
But apparently Activision just straight up published Sekiro.
And never
Japan
anything like
too.
that again, eh?
Yeah, that'll never happen
It was
again.
such a weird thing, man. That was such a
guess.
bizarre thing.
It still is.
We heard about that and we were like, the hell? An Activision FromSoft game? Is it going to suck, right? Like, and it didn't. And then they just never... Did they... Look it up. Did they ever do anything like that again? Activision?
Oh, there you go. Exactly what you just said.
It's looking to be a little more approachable.
You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of the interview when we back about the original Demon Souls, where they had to show Sony what they were working on, and they kind of had to try and hide some of the gameplay elements to make it seem like it would be easier than it really was.
Bro,
it's
what
like
the
they
hell
just
are you
straight
talking
up
about?
said that, because I remember
It's a lie.
I remember thinking about that before the game came out. Like, well, Activision's publishing this, so that they're gonna want mass appeal. It's probably not gonna be as hard as a Souls game. It's the hardest one.
Yeah, it's definitely the hardest one.
How did this happen?
It's such
Should
a
make
bizarre...
a whole video on this. Like, oh my god,
Sekiro published by Activision.
bizarre, eh?
He reiterates that the
Oh,
Japanese
see?
developer still has the final say. This is exactly how it should be. This
That's
is the case
key.
we're talking about,
That
right?
is exactly the most important thing right there. Japanese developer, FromSoft still have the final say, regardless of Activision publishing the game. They have given us all creative control. That's it right there.
It's the important thing, right? The subordination of financial to artistic considerations. So yeah, I guess, man, this game is it's my favorite front
It's a
stop game for
unicorn,
sure.
dude.
Yeah, it is a unicorn. It's a unicorn. I doubt we'll ever see anything like this again, eh?
No.
Certainly not from Activision. They're gone now. They're sucked up now.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, now they're, especially now if they're owned by Xbox. That's literally.
I wonder if wouldn't it be
Never
hilarious
happened.
if it'll blow my mind if something like that happens again. What if Microsoft publishes a fucking FromSoft
like an
game?
exclusive
What if
Souls
Microsoft-
game.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. An exclusive Xbox Microsoft Souls game. That would be very interesting. That would sell a boatload of Xboxes, I bet.
would.
Right?
Thank you guys very much for tuning in.
Thank you.
Monopolies suck and play your games. I guess we'll see you soon.
Oh, yeah.